Good morning everyone, and welcome to Thought for the Day from St Peter's, Halliwell. My name is Steve and I worship at St Andrew's, Johnson Fold. We continue today to consider the resurrection appearances of Jesus. There were less than a dozen altogether, and with the exception of 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 6, all the appearances are to small groups of people who are either in closed rooms behind locked doors or are in remote areas. These small and private encounters boosted the faith of people who already believe in Jesus. And as far as we know, not a single believer sees Jesus physically after his death. Today's reading is from the Gospel of John, chapter 20, verses 24 to 28, and they are as follows. Now Thomas, called Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe it." A week later his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands? Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." And Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Now, I just want to put on record at the very outset that I have a great deal of sympathy for this disciple. I know people who are not Christians but have heard of this man called Doubting Thomas. And I think they may actually believe that his first name really is Doubting. But I reckon the guy has received a bad press all down the centuries, all through the ages, or to use a current term, I think he's a victim of fake news. I want to suggest to you this morning that Thomas is a real blessing to Christians everywhere. For he reminds us that a skeptic, that someone who is unsure, someone who's got questions, someone who just needs a little bit more tangible evidence, is not rejected by God, and that our doubts and uncertainties do not lose us our place in God's kingdom. We see from these verses that Jesus came to Thomas as an individual, and in coming he addressed the very specific needs that Thomas had raised. So we can have confidence that if we have doubts, even doubts as strong as Thomas's, Jesus will come if we ask him to. Like Thomas, we need to be open and honest about them. We need to take them to God, not worrying about his feelings, what he might think and how he might do things. Just go with an open and honest heart to God. Forever since Adam, God has been hearing his servants cry out in distress. He has heard so many "why God" questions, and he's managed to survive them all. He really is big enough to listen to our needs and not be offended by them, and still to come to us in our time of need. Thomas's example says to me that it's better to doubt out loud than it is to disbelieve in silence. So as we wonder about these days we live in, as we consider the whys and wherefores, may I encourage you to do what Thomas did, to speak those doubts and fears to the Lord in prayer, and then to read again the accounts of Jesus in the Bible, how he controlled the natural and the supernatural world. Marvel again at the countless number of lives changed instantly by a touch or a word from him. When next we hear of Thomas, It's 2 chapters on in Acts chapter 1. And together with the other disciples, he is waiting for the promised Holy Spirit before going on to take the world by storm for Jesus. My fellow Christians, when our next chapter begins, when the current restrictions are lifted, when people begin to live lives not governed by fear or indecision, when folks are trying to make some sort of sense of it all, will we be ready across our parish, indeed across our nation, to share our faith in such a way that people will really feel the hope we have in Jesus? I sincerely hope so. Thank you very much for your time today. This is Stephen Thomas Walsh saying have a great day. Take care and keep safe. Amen.